the point in my life where I was starting to go, yeah, cooking's great, but I want to be the guy who owns the boat.
Boat owner.
You start learning the stories of some of these guys and how they made their money. And I met quite a few kind of self-made, seriously
Yeah.
successful guys, right? You listen to their story and yeah, I can do this. I could do this. The thing is with kitchens, right? They forge you in fire. Very similar to kind of special forces guys, Royal Marines, elite athletes, ER doctors, pilots, that kind of stuff is that they get you into a kitchen and they break you. You learn resilience, but you also learn what you're capable of. Your body will keep going quite a long time after your mind gives up. And in a kitchen, you can't do that. You've got to keep going. Doesn't matter
Yeah.
whether you're doing, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 hours, right? You've got to keep going. You've got to keep going. And you learn how to manage that in your mind. For me, I started looking at these guys. I'm like, yeah, I could do business. I could be a business guy, right?
Welcome to the Ageas podcast. Buckle up. This episode is brought to you by Better Weight for Life, transformational weight loss aid, led by U.S. board-certified physicians, providing access to GLP-1 medications like Wegovy and Zepbound that are proven to help you lose weight and keep it off. This episode is brought to you by Cards Biz, a business card too good to give away.
Hello, Daniel.
How you doing? How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. And I know it's going to be, and I know it's even going to be better once we start diving in.
There's an awful lot we can talk about.
Yeah. So let me, I know, set this up a bit because I think most of the people that have been on the podcast so far, not all of them, but most of them came from the technology side.
Okay.
But you are now an exited founder.
Yeah.
And your last company was, I don't know if you would agree with this title, was the Michelin star dining in the air, right?
Yeah.
Of the skies.
That's it. Private jets. We only did private aviation. Everything from small citation jets up to flying palaces, head of state, royalty, 747s, 777s kind of stuff. So yeah, it was certainly a crazy business, that's for sure. And there was a lot more from an operational point of view and system-wise than just trying to produce.
So how will we start? Maybe for people who don't understand, before we talk about your very fascinating story, how you got to that, but people who don't understand even this industry, the private jet business, can you give them a little context before we dive into your specific story?
It's called private aviation or business aviation, really. It's really business aviation. I think often the misconception is that, you have a private jet and rock stars and film stars fly around to their private islands. But actually, the most majority of the business aviation world is it's a business tool. It gets people in front of customers, clients, and it gets them in face to face. It is the only industry in the world that can sell time. And it is a tool for that reason. People can, it's got ultra high speed internet. You can get on board that aircraft with your whole team. You can work non-stop as you're flying. You can land. You can get to your meeting. You can do your meeting. You can get back on the aircraft and you're flying to the next meeting. You leave your house. You're in your car. You drive straight up to the stairs of the aircraft. You get on board and you're airborne in 10 minutes, right? So it's a very effective and efficient business tool. They're very expensive to run and operate, but it's a big niche industry, if you like. It's global. US has the most private aircraft in the world.
And the most landing places they can land also.
Yeah,
right?
but also the size of the market. I think the numbers is like over 20,000 private jets in the US.
Wow.
But it's secure, it's safe, it's fast. I remember reading an article in the, I think it was in like Times Magazine or something, and they were looking at the cost of a board, not what they make, not what their salaries are, but what their worth is to that business. And I think they looked at the board of Coca-Cola, and each member of the board were worth something like $600,000 an hour, right?
Wow.
To the company. So if you start putting those people through commercial airports and aircraft,
But they have to be 2.5 hours before the flight.
Exactly.
That's like That's a million point age driver. Right?
So that is the main point of it. It's used for many things. A lot of you get medical evacuations that it's used for as well. You then have your head of state, government aircraft, they're flying a huge aircraft all over the world and getting in front of people. So that's the industry. I mean, they say that for every individual on an aircraft, there's over 1,000 people that are employed to keep that aircraft in the air, right?
Wow.
Everything from catering, servicing, engineering, landing, handling, fuel, FBOs, runway maintenance, all these kind of things. There's a huge kind of niche industry behind it. So, and we were one of those little cogs of the wheel, if you like.
So this is like not a standard thing. I don't think I don't think my 12-year-old wakes up in the morning and says, when I grow up, I want to make the best food possible for the top 1% of economic the economic powerhouses of the world, so they can eat it in the jet. So like, how did you get it?
So I trained as a chef, and I worked in a number of really top end Michelin star. I left school like 16 and went straight into restaurants, right?
Why and why? Before you continue, it's like, why? Because that's a tough business. That's also a tough business.
Well, because one, I hated school, right? Hated it. And there's just so many entrepreneurs in our network that are like, yeah, man, me too. So I'm type 1 diabetic, right? I wanted to join the Royal Marines. That was my thing. I also wanted to be a stunt man.
Okay.
I wanted to be the opening 10 minutes of a James Bond film. That was my thing, right? But back then, we're going back a long time now, 30 years or so. As diabetics, you were told you can do most things, right? Certainly not join the Royal Marines. So anyway, I was like, I hate school, and then somebody says to me, man, you should be a chef. I'm like, yeah, okay. And I remember walking into that. I started in a very famous restaurant called Scott's of Mayfair. And
Which restaurant?
Called Scott's of Mayfair.
Okay.
Anyway, I remember walking in there as this cocky East London kid. I'm like, yeah, man. They made me feel about this big in like a matter of hours. Right? They're like, yeah, boy, get in this kitchen. And it was certainly a baptism of fire, right? And so then I did that, and then I ended up in the south of France. I started working on super yachts. I mean, that was amazing. Like, very difficult job, really tough job, right?
What was amazing about it? What was difficult?
Amazing was you're working on these incredible boats all over the world, and you get paid a shit ton of money, right? And often in cash at the end of the week. But I learned a lot. I loved working. You would get good clients and bad clients. When I had a couple of really kind of big famous people, big wealthy guys who I worked on their boats a lot, and you build a relationship with them and you understand how they think and what they want. And but intense business, right? Intense. Like, you can only do kind of 6 months, max 8-month stints before you're like,
because it's that draining.
Yeah. Super intense. Like, you're not just cooking for all the people on board, you're cooking for all the staff and the crew.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very interesting. While I was in this at this time, this was like in my kind of early 20s, 21, 22, 20. I learned to teach scuba diving. So I would work on super yachts, work my ass off, and then I'd go and live in Southeast Asia, Thailand, and mainly Thailand, but Indonesia as well, and teach scuba diving and basically just party my ass off for 3, 4, 6 months, 8 months, what. And then I would be like, okay, back to the yachts, and I go do the yachts again. But so that was interesting.
And what did you learn from that? Like, you said you developed, like, both on a personal basis on the job, but also you said you developed relationship with the business owner, like the business people who own the yachts. And what did you manage to learn from that?
I think for me, that was at the point in my life where I was starting to go, yeah, cooking's great, but I want to be the guy who owns the boat. I don't want to be the guy.
The boat owner. Yes.
I want to be the owner, right? And you're looking at it, you start learning the stories of some of these guys and how they made their money. And I met quite a few kind of self-made, seriously successful guys, right? and you listen to their story, and you think, "I'm like, yeah, I can do this. I could do this. This is, you know, the thing is with kitchens, right, is they forge you in fire. You are, and it's very similar that I think it's very similar to kind of, special forces guys, Royal Marines, elite athletes, ER doctors, pilots, that kind of stuff. Is that they get you into a kitchen and they break you, and then
Yeah.
they make, right?
Yeah.
And
In their image.
yeah, and you learn resilience, but you also learn what you're capable of, right? So your body will keep going quite a long time after your mind gives up, right? And in a kitchen, you can't do that. You've got to keep going. Doesn't matter
Yeah.
whether you're doing, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 hours, right? You've got to keep going. You've got to keep going. And you learn how to manage that in your mind, right? So for me, I started looking at these guys. I'm like, yeah, I could do business. I could be a business guy, right? And, jump forward a few more years, and I met my wife, and we decided that we're going to open a catering company in Valencia in Spain. And I won a load of contracts for the America's Cup yacht racing, and we were crazy. That was a crazy story and in itself, right? We were winging it big time. And we were slightly down south from Valencia, and I said to my brother-in-law, who was kind of working with me as well, we're like, dude, let's just phone the America's Cup management, right, and see what they're up to, and see if we can like get in. So we made this phone call, and they're like, "Oh, you're Valencian catering or Spanish?" We're like, no. This is what we do. I built these giant barbecues, right, huge barbecues for al fresco cooking, right, and these things were.
You build them yourself? You
Yeah,
build the
I
okay.
had them built by a welder, and I
Yeah.
designed these things, and I got the idea from a company in London who had these massive barbecues, right? So I had these big barbecues built, and they said to me, "Oh, do you want? America's Cup is a huge event, right? Big yachting race." And they said, "Oh, can you come up and do a take? Can you come and show us what you can do?" So we loaded up this van, and we put all this food on, and we went up there, and we did this presentation.
Yeah.
Anyway, at the end of it, the big boss was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing! Can you come and do an event for us?" And I'm thinking, "Yeah, cool." Like in a few weeks' time, this was like a Wednesday. They're like, "We got a party for 600 people on Saturday."
On Wednesday. My God.
Mate,
Which is interesting. I don't know what's more surprising, that he tells you to do that and expects you to do it, or that he didn't have food for Saturday.
well, I don't know. We kind of got the impression that the caterer that they'd been using, because the America's Cup had actually started, because we thought
Yeah.
we were too late to the party, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, what the impression we got was the caterer that they'd contracted had massively let them down and was shit.
Oh.
And they were like, "Listen, we got this party on Saturday night for 600 people. Can you do it?" And of course, I'm like, "Yeah, of course we can." And my brother-in-law and my wife are like, "You're
crazy.
you crazy?" So anyway,
This is a classical entrepreneurial moment. Of course we can. Of course
man.
it works. Of course I have it ready.
So here's the crazy part, right? We were doing like small parties, and so we had like a little kitchen, nowhere near capable of catering for 600 people. So anyway, I get straight on the phone to my mate who lived in the same town as us. We were like an hour south. So, dude, I need to hire your whole restaurant, all your chefs. This is what we're gonna do. So, and of course, he was quite entrepreneurial. I was like, "Yeah, man, let's do it!" Right? So we were like on the phone to suppliers, and I can remember driving back to making all these phone calls. Right? I took over his kitchen, right, and there was probably about 6 or 7 of us, and we got the food in, we prepped up the food, we rented a couple of big box cold vans. And then the day of the party, we had a friend of ours who kind of had a staffing agency. So we're like, right, I need 10 of your staff. And I remember having to go to Macro and basically buy tables, all the equipment. We didn't have nowhere near enough equipment, right? And we bought that like the day before. We loaded it in the vehicle. Anyway, we rocked up. We pulled off this party, and they absolutely loved it. And at this party were also the South African team and the French team.
Do you remember what you made? I'm just so curious. Do you
From
remember?
my point of view,
What?
What, from a money point of, oh, do you remember the food or the
Food you
money?
made? Yeah,
The
I mean
food.
both. Actually, both.
So I did things like entire sides of sirloin steak,
Yeah,
because these barbecues were big. They were a
yeah,
meter
yeah.
and a half by, a good 60 centimeters deep, big racks. So I could do entire sides of salmon, all sirloin strips, massive loins of beef. What else did we do? We did like whole chickens,
Yeah.
spatchcocked with herbs and spices, and then we did tons of salads in big bowls, and it was very kind of like rustic Mediterranean, like with fire and grill and all the rest of it, right? And we had a cocktail bar, set a cocktail bar, which my wife and my brother-in-law ran, and they had no idea how to run a bar. My wife did have some experience, right? She kind of got to grips with it, right? Anyway, so we did this party, and actually and it was for all the America Cup teams, right?
Yeah.
The New Zealand, it was a South African team, and
Yeah.
the French team came to us after, like, man, this is amazing. We've got like a party like every week. Do you want to do it? And I'm like, yeah, of course we can, man. Yeah, no problem. And then the America's Cup came back, and they're like, okay, here's our schedule for the next 6 weeks. And it was like 1 or 2 parties a week.
Wow.
And at that point, I'm thinking,
Did you meaning you were double booking at this moment?
we were able to schedule them, right?
Yeah, yeah.
At that point, I'm thinking, we can't be driving an hour and a half backwards and forwards to our kitchen in the south.
Yeah.
Right? So I can't remember how we met him. We met this other guy who did catering, but really
Yeah.
kind of basic stuff, right? Sandwiches and canapes. And I just said to him, listen, man, I want to hire your kitchen for the whole 6 weeks. I want your team. And so we just moved lock stock up to Valencia.
Wow.
And we just did that. We just pulled it off. We did all these parties. I can remember one day though. Oh my God, it was so stressful. We had one of the bigger parties. Like some of them were like for 150, 250, 300. One of the big parties for like 600. The meat supplier didn't show up. Right. So 2 days before, I'm saying to him, "There's my meat because I've got to marinate it overnight. We've got to prep it tomorrow. We've got to be ready, right? It's got to be loaded in a van in the morning. It's got to be shipped over this big lunch barbecue." Anyway, the guy was like, yeah, I'll be there. The next day, I'm like, dude, where's my fucking meat?
Yeah.
Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, you're allowed to swear. You're allowed to keep it as real as like you're allowed to be realistic and exact as it was.
So then we're like, we're going to have to go to Macro. We're just going to have to buy a load of food. Anyway, this guy kept promising and promising. He turned up 9 a.m. the day of the party at the venue, right?
Oh
Because we'd run out of time, right? So
Yeah.
we had to take all the spices. So I had 2 of the chefs in the back of one of the cold vans, basically marinated meat in great big boxes that got delivered from the guy. We're going straight from the marinade. These guys unpacking the meat, putting the marinade straight onto the barbecues. And we just winged it. We winged it. It was, and we made good money, and we did really well, and all the rest of it. The challenge was
Yeah.
economy just tanked, right?
Yeah.
But that was the year that Formula One came in, and we thought we were going to win Formula One contracts, and actually it was just total sewn up, like it didn't get it right. But yeah, that was the first kind of. I mean, I dabbled with little businesses and done private parties and that stuff, but that was probably the first proper business. And my wife even laughs about it now. She's like, "How the hell did we pull that off?" So yeah, that was that was it then. And I was like, yeah, I'm not working for anyone else ever again.
Yeah.
However, 2008 economy collapsed, right? So we're like, oh. So I had a number of private clients who used to pay me well, and so I was flying backwards and forwards to the UK, and I saw all these private jets parked up for the Formula One. Well, I've done boats, done houses, done events. Why don't I give private jets a go?
Yeah. You're basically going from one mode of transportation to another, right?
Right.
Yeah. One premium mode of transportation.
Okay. And what I didn't realize was just how complex it was, right?
Yeah.
However, the opportunity that I saw was I had a friend of mine whose girlfriend, he's now married to her and they got kids and stuff. She was a private jet flight attendant. And I said to her, what's the deal with the food and all the rest of it? And I said, is it like Michelin stars? She's like, no, most of the time it's shit. Really? I said, I'll tell you what, send me photos, show me what you're dealing with, packaging, all the rest of it. And she's sending me all these photos and I'm thinking, oh, this is a poor standard of food. Not only was it poor standard, it was like stuck in the 80s. So
and why is that? Why was that? Why was that?
I don't know. I think mainly because no one had really focused on it. There were a couple of good players in the market, and they were trying to do this stuff, but it was basic. There was no real innovation. There was nothing that was like cutting edge, new had been done. I started doing my research, and I put a business plan together. I pitched it to a company I was working with, kind of private chefing with at the time, and they were like, "Yeah, okay." And over the next year, I was pretty brutal that first year. Business aviation operates 24 hours and 7 days a week, and you can't say no. There's
Yeah.
no contracts, right?
Yeah, and explain that, right? So explain that to the world, because when I heard you say that, like my mind went like pause a second. You're operating with the world's wealthiest clientele, right? In one of the most expensive niche markets out there, no contracts.
Now, one caveat.
One caveat.
There are probably 3 or 4 massive companies that operate like NetJets and FlexJet.
Yeah.
And they have a contract, but it's not worth the paper it's written on, because in every contract it's written in there, we can still choose whoever we want, right?
Okay.
So you're like, oh,
So
okay.
there's either contract or contract that mean nothing.
Yeah, they mean nothing, right?
Yeah.
But we didn't have any contracts. We had none, right? Really, the only real kind of main contract.
But why is that? What's so unique about this industry that it operates without contract?
Because they always want to be able to choose. The customer gets to choose who they use, right?
So you're basically only as good as your last meal.
Absolutely. Like you are literally only as good as your last flight. You screw it up, you never see the customer again.
Yeah.
Now, when you build up long-term relationships, there's a
little credit in the bank. There's
credit up in the bank, right? But you miss an aircraft departure and there's no food on board. Especially when you start to look at where we ended up, where we were one of the, I would say, biggest and best players in the market globally, right? So I specifically engineered the business into an area of the industry which is low volume, high margin. So I only dealt with, mostly they were privately owned or corporate owned or head of state, royal flights, that kind of thing, right? So the market is, there is a range, right? I stuck to the top. My average order was £1,000 an order when, the average order in general was about 250. And that was, and I moved into that and specifically focused on that after a few years because, it was something that we mastered. And that was because of the system, I built a lot of systems, how to be able to do the food.
So walk us through, like, because I know you did things like, I know you told me that you did even things in the level of like everything between how the food tastes in when it's in the sky, right, under certain air pressure, to the systems you had to build and the delivery. So like for people who are totally ignorant of the complexities, like walk us through this.
So there are a lot of people. I had over 100 staff, and people would say to us, "Well, what's it like managing all those chefs?" And so, well, actually, only 40% of my team is chefs. My biggest team is my logistics team, right? And then my concierge. So the food side, an aircraft is the harshest environment to eat food in, right? It is incredibly dry. We as human beings operate between 20 and 80% humidity in jungle. An aircraft can be as dry as 5% humidity, right? Because you don't want humidity on board.
You cannot, you don't open the window,
right? Destroys the aircraft. So they have to keep these aircraft dry. I mean, you open a tray of triangle sandwiches, you can literally watch these things dry and curl in front.
Wow.
Why is that important for food? Oh, and if you look at the Dreamliner and the A350, these new aircraft coming out, they actually pump in moisture into the aircraft, right? Mm-hmm. The reason that's important is because if your nose is dry, you can't smell. If you can't smell, you can't taste. Yep. Your taste goes, right? Remember your mum gave you medicine when you're a kid, hold your nose, right? So I had to look at how to ensure that you got a level of moisture in the mouth that would keep the nose moist. And that's when I discovered umami. And umami is your fifth sense of taste, right? And umami is a glutamate, so you get it in meat, mushrooms, Parmesan cheese. The most famous one is soy sauce. What happens is when you eat those foods, the saliva glands at the back of your mouth fire off, They push moisture up the back of your throat. It evaporates, and that's what keeps your nose.
As you're talking about it, I'm tasting, and the moisture's being created in my mouth. Yes.
So here's a crazy one. Tomato juice on the ground.
Yeah.
When you're on an aircraft, tomato juice tastes amazing, and it could be cheap crap, right? You have that tomato juice when you're up in the air.
So that's why people like the whatchamacallit, vodka.
Tomato.
Yeah.
Bloody Mary.
Bloody Mary on the aircraft so much.
Yeah, because
Wow.
it tastes really good, right? Sushi tastes great. The other thing that I discovered is 50% of your taste of salt is lost. And the reason for that is because the pressure pressurizes the taste buds and you just lose that taste. However, umami is not affected by it, right? And it's kind of salty, right? So what we did is I started to look at every single dish and every single recipe and say, okay, how can we incorporate as much umami into that food as possible? So we would put things like seaweed in our sauces. When we were making stocks, we put seaweed in, shiitake mushrooms, those kind of things. We also needed to increase the acidity. So we used to get specially pressed apple juice, but green apples like Granny Smith's, and that would increase the acidity as well. So you've got these things going on the aircraft that really affect the taste. So everything has been done. The other thing on an aircraft, you eat with your eyes even more, right? Because when one sense gets dampened, the others enhance. So the key thing for me when I was designing the product and thing at the beginning, I'm like, right, we gotta deal with the dryness, we gotta deal with the loss of salt, but also it's gotta look really cool. So I designed this photo step-by-step instruction card, right? So, and the reason that was important as well is when I was starting to interview flight attendants, I was like, okay, so how do you get the food? Are you shown how it's supposed to look? And they're like, no, we just got to
just for it and deliver.
I'm thinking,
yeah, and I see the horror on your face, right?
Right, yeah. Thinking, oh man, this is not cool, right? So we're going to put all these, chefs are going to put all this work in, and then some flight attendants just going to doom, 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 put it on a plate.
Yeah.
So I designed that as well.
And what was it? Was it literally like a Lego instruction?
Yeah, it was a bit like a Lego instruction, but it was just an A5 sheet of card, and it would have 6 photos on it, and then some instruction. But the thing that was paired with that made it so special and cutting edge. I mean, we were the first company in the world to do this. I was the first person to put this on aircraft. It was cutting edge. The addition to that was the packaging. I spent hundreds of hours researching and playing with packaging, right? How it was going to be packaged. And I used to have these tiny little squeezy bottles. I found this company and they were the only, like these little art squeezy bottles, like little glue bottles.
Yeah.
The thing is, with a lot of those art bottles, the plastic is really hard and doesn't squeeze. Yeah. I found this company who did this injection molding with the soft type of plastic. And so I got these tiny little mini bottles that would do these little dots and drizzles and that kind of stuff. It was my closest guarded secret. Companies from all around the world asked me, even the head of catering from Etihad once asked me, like, oh, where'd you get them from? So you can buy them from me if you want. So there was these little things, all these little incremental changes and these little things that made this product so special because we took 80% of the flight away from the flight attendant.
Yeah.
It was a paint by numbers kit system with a photo card. They'd get the dish out of the fridge and it would be in little compartmentalized. And we designed little things like folded pieces of paper that you could lift stuff up with. We designed things that would allow you to maneuver one thing to another on a plate. And it just increased efficiency massively for the flight attendant. But the end result was a dish that looked amazing. Mistakes at the beginning, but essentially that is what made us cutting edge. And
so was the, I mean, it clearly, everything you did was extremely thought through. And you did what like any good entrepreneurs should do. Like you thought about all the angles. You interviewed you didn't say about interviewing the clients, but you interviewed the people that are your secondary clients and the people actually delivering the experience to the clients. But did you have any guiding vision, or was it just like optimization throughout the process?
It was constant Kaizen, right?
Okay.
That, and I read a lot of that over the years, but it was that constant incremental change and perfection, right? And I think it's important to understand that the complexity of how our kitchens operate, out of all the kitchens I've ever worked in or ever run or managed or owned, this was by far the most complex operating kitchen ever. I mean,
Explain.
we would have chefs come and work for me, talented, 10, 15, 20 years, and they'd come in and go, "Oh, holy shit, right? How, this is crazy business, right?" So what I designed is I designed an operating system. I knew we were getting busy, right? We were starting to
Yeah.
break. I was doing 20-hour days. I was burning myself out. I was burning chefs out. And I sat back and I remember reading the Ray Kroc book on McDonald's. and
Hmm.
and I'm like, I need to sit back and look at the system of how we deliver this product at
Yeah.
volume, because we're fucking breaking. So what I did is I looked at new technology, right? So I looked at water baths, sous videing, dehydration, the latest packaging system, so you can bag things up. So what I did is I designed the system in my freezer and my fridges like a filing cabinet system. We had like drawers and trays, and everything we produced would be individually portioned, right? And then it would either be frozen or it would be put in the fridge. So when a chef needed a dish, whether it was one dish or 30 of a dish, he could walk in and go through the filing cabinet and go, okay, one of those, one of those, one of those, or I need three of those, three of those, three of those, or five of those, or five of those, five of those. And so the mise en place, or the prep work, was vitally important to make the finishing and packaging speed up. And so I created that process so that once I designed that and we polished it and we tweaked and tweaked and tweaked, it meant that we could go from doing 10 flights a day to 50, 60, 70 flights a day, right? And not only that, by the end, we could do that many smaller flights, but I could also throw in there one or two or three or four jumbo jet wide bodies, right? And these wide bodies, some of their orders would be kind of 20 A4 pages long. You're talking about thousands of items, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60,000 pounds worth of food in one flight, right? And we were able, and there's no notice.
I'm actually, so one second, I want to get an idea, because like I think you're making very clear about the complexity of operational excellence you needed to get this. But I want to take a big picture question and a micro question. It's like how complex did it get at the Heights? I meaning how many orders a day, how many flights a day did you get, like the record? And then maybe walk us through an example of what does it mean in order? What does an order looks like?
So we would do anything from 5 to 60, 70 flights in 24 hours.
Again,
5 to 75 flights in a 24-hour period.
Right? 5 to 7 or 5 to 75? Sorry.
5. So we would do a quiet day, you might do 5 flights. A busy day, you could do 70.
Wow. That's a big difference.
Massive.
It's a big variance.
The other big variant of is that, is what I call the heavy metal market, right? And there were two companies in London that really dominated that market. There's us and another big company, right? And these were jumbo jets, massive aircraft, right? I had 5 18-ton high loader trucks that would offload, load, that kind of stuff. So we might have a day where we got 25 flights and the kitchen's busy and it might be a small order. It might just be fruit and sandwiches and cheese and juices and flowers and newspapers and that kind of stuff. But normally there'd be longer distance flights because of our type of client base. And you could be doing 20, 30 flights, and then all of a sudden we get a phone call 6 o'clock at night saying, hey, the XY royal member of royal family from the Middle East is landing in 6 hours time, right? And the lorry would have to go unload all the crockery to the facility. The guys would then have to, and a wide body could be more food than 30 flights combined, right? And we would have to turn that flight round in a 24-hour period.
What do you mean laundry?
Laundry. So I built a laundry business as well.
Oh, okay. So that was missing from the conversation. Okay.
Napkins, blankets, pillows, that kind of stuff. If I had my time again, I'd just do laundry. It's such a great business.
More margins, less variance.
Great. It's brilliant. So the business model had to be able to cope with rapid expansion and
Yeah.
rapid decline very quickly on a day-to-day basis.
Wow.
Right? We could kind of get a prediction of which months are busy. We knew kind of which months were busy, which weren't. We knew when there were big events on, Champions League, these kind of things, right? So you could kind of guess it, but you would never know. If we got more than 48 hours notice on a flight, we were lucky.
Okay.
Most of it was 24 max.
And what location? And this was in Spain. This was in England. Like, where did you operate? London.
In London.
And
So
just London is just a big enough hub that it's just like you constantly had.
Average about 150 to 200 flights a day depart from London. Private.
Private.
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes you had 50% of the market. That means.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that could go up to 300-400 flights.
Yeah.
Right. So it all depended. And I had positions in Stansted in the northeast, and I had position in Farnborough Airport in the southwest. I had 2 locations, right? And that gave me all of London cover. We didn't deliver to Gatwick or Heathrow. Private jets did not go in there. Stansted was the heavy metal. That's where the big stuff comes in.
So explain what you mean when you mentioned, what does heavy metal mean? Just it's a big plane? That's what it means, or something else?
Yeah, wide bodies. So anything that is a 737 and up is a wide body. So anything EasyJet, Ryanair, that's a 737, A320. Yeah. That's the smallest version, up to giant 4-engine jumbo jets.
And who's in the premium heavy metal space?
Royal families, Middle East royal families.
Oh, so basically big like the whole entourage and operations with it.
Billionaires and oligarchs. You know? But we also did a lot of there's a lot of private charter out there. So football teams, rock and roll tours. The famous one, Iron Maiden. Which is
really heavy metal. Literally.
And he actually flies it, right? He flies aircraft. He's a pilot, right?
Oh, that's amazing. I didn't know that.
So it's quite from an aircraft side, it's quite a diverse market. But my aim, we only really aimed for the mid-size, bigger private jets and wide bodies. We really do little stuff. We didn't really do little flights all around Europe.
When somebody wants a meal, like a quality meal, basically. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, it's more on the size of the aircraft and how many passengers were on board, right?
Okay.
So an average order, they would order starters, main courses, desserts. But also these are long distance flights, right? They're doing 8, 9, 10, 12, 14 hours on an aircraft. So they need breakfast and lunch. They need juices, water, fruit baskets, fruit, sandwiches, flowers, newspapers. What else? There was a whole world of stuff that needed bread rolls, street, all these kind of things, desserts. It was an entire menu, you know. And they would also, depending on the customer, it might be quite specific. They wanted we had a lot of partnerships with top restaurants like Nobu and Hakisan and stuff. So if we were in and out of Harrods almost on a daily basis in their food hall, really? Because they wanted a specific thing. Or they wanted sushi from Nobu. And
that actually was about to be my question. Did you ever get custom requests? So
yeah. So when people ask what we do, I would say, well, we're not a caterer. We're a culinary concierge service. You can have whatever you want. We'll get it for you. And that's where
and you just have to price it.
Yeah. Right. So we'd put a pretty significant margin on top. Right. But we were taking all the risk. The other thing is that so this is where my logistics team came in. I had a big logistics team. Right, we were operating heavy lorries. My vehicles were running around all day, and that's 24/7. And so we were in and out of London constantly, collecting things for people, picking them up, and we charged them accordingly for it, right?
Yeah.
But so crazy business, man.
So I mean, it's fascinating. But what's very interesting is like you basically started as a chef, right?
Yeah.
You started as a chef. And you found yourself in the top of basically a very sophisticated logistics company. Like how, on a personal basis or on a company level, how did you develop the skill sets to be able to do that? Okay.
It's funny because now I've been persuaded to write a book. I'm actually going through it all. I'm like, oh yeah, that's where I learned that. And I had my fingers burnt a lot. But I think it goes back to what I learned in kitchens, right? It goes back to the learning about precision and managing stress and being meticulously organized. I made all the typical mistakes, right? I was very good at marketing and sales. I was always
Okay.
very good. Uh, I kind of, I suppose you go through that tier system, right? I got to a point where I was just absolutely burned out, and I realized that I needed to increase my management team, which I think also a lot of entrepreneurs go through, right? I've always been quite good with numbers. I made lots of mistakes with finance, but, eventually learned it. I put myself on lots of courses and got to know lots of other business owners and that kind of stuff, and basically just battled my way through, really, and taught myself as I went along the way. I certainly made some very big mistakes that cost me dearly along the route, right?
You invested in your education dearly.
Yeah, that's it, right?
That's what I call it, and I'm sticking
Yeah,
to it. This $2 million went into my education,
yeah,
my Ivy League
that's it,
education.
right? It's like you should now exiting. I'm like, people are like, oh, what are you gonna do? And I'm like, not another startup ever. Right? But the education of what I went through,
Yeah,
what was invaluable, like money can't buy kind of stuff, right?
yeah.
So you're looking back over those years and the mistakes and the losses and I had some, I had some, few betrayal stories and that kind of stuff, and you get to the point where you kind of get the hang of it, right? Um, I also taught myself to analyze things. I really start to say, okay, and try and take emotion out of decisions was another key lesson I learned, right? Try not to be the emotional chef and more the business. The E Myth, you read the E Myth?
Yes.
That was a game changing book for me in business. That's like my top three always. I give that out to so many people. It's that understanding of how if you build the systems and you design a business that could be replicated like a franchise, you build something that's secure, build something that can grow. And that's going back to my first point is that I realized before I read that book that if I didn't design the background operating system for the kitchen, we were just never going to make it. We would just keep,
Yeah, you would break.
yeah. So I don't know if that answered your question, mate.
No, it did, but it's fascinating. And look, it's. I think look, it was so many, and Weber, because we talk. We're both in EO, right? And
Yeah.
and so even on the so people who don't know, EO is an entrepreneur organization. It has nearly 20,000 entrepreneurs worldwide, and you get to very intimate conversations with a lot of entrepreneurs, and
Yeah.
it's not exact, but those stories repeat, right? Like people fuck up, people either learn or don't. That they might stop being entrepreneurs, and everybody goes through those experiences, right? The question is like, do they walk away from the plane crash or they don't? That's literally what it is.
That's
I don't,
quite, like, considering what we're talking about. Yeah. It's like,
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'll find a better metaphor. I'll find a better metaphor than that. But it's like I don't know anybody that was like honest, like an entrepreneur that I know that did not get burned, screw up, make mistakes. And the question is just did they succeed afterwards or they didn't? Right? That's the only question, right? It's like because there's something about pushing the envelope in the kitchen, in sports, in the unstructured world of business that requires you to put you in situations that there's no right answer, right? There's either two bad options that you need just to do together another day, or you need to invent an option that never existed before,
yeah.
right? To move forward.
Think, I kitchens taught me resilience, right?
Yeah,
Kitchens taught me that and a good friend of mine ended up in the SBS, right? In the special
yeah,
force. And he left the SBS for a little while. Me and him set up another business together and that kind of stuff. And me and him used to talk for hours about PTSD and burnout and that cycle. I remember him telling me we used to talk about hours late at night, right? That the selection process for the special forces is not about the strongest and the most macho and the fittest guy in the room, right? It's about who can manage this because the body will keep going.
psychology.
This breaks And I remember him telling me, look, time, and he was talking about the jungle phase, right? Where they spend like 30, 40 days in the jungle.
Yeah.
Two sets of clothing that they're swapping from a plastic bag and taking it out. They're in the wet, they're in the cold. It is just brutal, right?
There's no comfort. There's no point you could be comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember him saying to me, he said, you know, there were guys that he was young. He was one of the youngest. I think he was the youngest ever member of the SBS ever to pass selection. Right? And I remember him saying to me, he's like, I would watch these older guys that I was like, oh my God, these guys are like super Marines. They're going to make it. And I'd watch them break one after the other. And that's what, you know, that's when I kind of started to think that, you know, start to understand it's this that goes, if you can control this, the body will just keep going, right?
Yeah.
You know, and elite athletes, these guys who run these crazy ultra marathons and the rest of it, right? Their bodies are just done.
Yeah.
Their bodies will keep going, but their mind is telling them, you got to stop, right?
Yeah.
So I learned that in the kitchens quite early on. And I think that's what I took into this crazy business, right? That kept me driving and kept me going. And I always think about that. There's an image I always had. I can't remember where I saw it. I think it is the guy who is digging for gold, right?
Yeah.
And there's a picture in a little cartoon strip, and he's like, eventually he gives up. But there's a picture that just the two pickaxes later, he's going to hit the gold, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's, you know, the most successful entrepreneurs I've ever met have failed to go bust, right? But it's that entrepreneurial drive that keeps moving forward, and then eventually you hit the goal. Eventually you get there. Eventually you get it, you know. And I exited, and last year I exited, and that was great. I managed to survive COVID, which was brutal. You know, March 2020, I got on a plane, said goodbye to my kids, said, don't worry, Daddy's going to be back in 2 weeks. I ended up having to sleep in my office because I couldn't sleep at my mum's house because we just moved to Barcelona and I didn't really have any accommodation. But we were about to exit. That's the whole reason we moved to Barcelona. And anyway, I got there and my mum's like, can't stay with me. I ended up sleeping in my office for 4 months, right?
Wow.
On a little camp bed that my feet would hang over the end. And I stole a TV from the tasting room and I put it on the desk, and I had a little chair and I had a gym and I had this little camp bed. And the only bathroom and toilet was 100 meters across this aircraft hangar, right? I don't know if you've been in an aircraft hangar, but at 2 o'clock in the morning,
it's freezing. It's freezing.
Place was haunted, right?
Yeah.
And but I was there for 4 months. And the whole industry just collapsed, right? And I had to, and so it was either a case of we just gave up and quit. And I remember talking with my 2 shareholders. I had 2 great shareholders, arm's length kind of guys, nice guys, right? And they were like, should we just call it a day? And I thought, you know what? This is going to end one day, right?
At some point.
We can either do 2 things. We can either close, we can do 3 things. Close for good, close and just see what happens. Or let's hunker down. Let's start focusing on delivering our private jet product to houses. And I launched another company called One Find, right? I quickly built a website. My wife did some social media, and within about 8 months, we were killing it. We were way ahead of the market, right? Because of course, all these private chefs and everybody, they started doing home delivery, but they had no idea about logistics. They had no idea about packaging. I was in GQ magazine 3 times, Sunday Times. We were in all the press, right? As this, oh my God, this is fucking amazing. And that's what kept us afloat, right?
So talk a little bit about this. So like, okay, so you basically took the infrastructure of high quality packaged goods, your packaged gourmet food, and you started doing home delivery. Is that correct? What infrastructure did you use for the delivery?
Everything we had, right? So I had a fleet of, I don't know, 12, 15 vehicles.
Oh, you delivered yourself?
Yeah, we delivered ourselves.
You didn't I know, you guys have door lane. What is it? DoorDash? What's Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Jumps out of his van. He's got like a cigarette in his mouth. and he picks up our boxes covered in fragile stickers and he starts launching them into the back of the van. And I'm like, whoa, what the fuck? What are you doing?
My
Guys,
God.
like, as he's got fragile written all over it, right? So I think one of the boxes, I just heard this smash, right? So I'm like, right, you give me all the boxes back. And at that point, we said, you know what? We're only going to stick to the Southeast and we're only going to stick to London.
Yeah.
We're only going to do orders, I think, above £250, right?
Okay, so like it makes economic sense.
Yeah. And we're going to deliver ourselves, right? We actually found a partner in London who did cold delivery for like fruit and for customers who were struggling as well. And we said, look, let's do a partnership. You do all our internal central London and we'll do everything around it. We occasionally had orders to like Manchester and stuff, and we just used to charge them and drive up and take it, right? Because they would pay the bill. But we had real first mover advantage because I didn't need to design anything.
You just repurposed it.
Just needed to move the brand onto the boxing, print some stickers, but I had to create a website and a Shopify website that started to sell it. And my wife did an amazing job with the marketing, and we were just in every major newspaper. And then we won best home delivery box kit 2 years in a row, right?
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. However, the market got massively saturated, as you can imagine, right?
It became a red ocean, as they say, really quickly at some point.
We won GQ's best Christmas dinner award, right? But this is the thing, right? I in the private jet world, I understood PR. PR is everything. I don't do advertising. PR is, if you get it right, so powerful, right? So I phoned up a friend of mine who was in food PR, and I said to her, look, Lucy, this is what I need you to do. I need you to phone every editor of every newspaper, every magazine you know, and tell them that the world's best private jet catering company is going to send you a free meal, right? And that was the first thing I did. So basically, we just, and of course, like 90% of them are like stuck at home, right? Doing press. And like, yeah, okay. And
I'm willing to be bribed.
Yeah, right. And from that, it was like, yeah, it just rocketed. But the market got saturated, right? And we started to lose momentum, right? We were up against all the Michelin star chefs, but interestingly enough, we were being compared and beating top Michelin star chefs with their box food, right?
That's amazing.
Our food wasn't necessarily better than theirs. It was easier for you to use because we tested them and they were just too difficult. You needed to be a chef to be able to do the dishes.
And you already had the Lego system for home delivery,
exactly,
like ready to be deployed.
Exactly. So, but it got saturated. And then what happened is 2022, private jet market just came back with like a vengeance. COVID was the best advert for using a private jet ever, right?
Do not engage with the masses that might kill you through viruses.
Yeah. So, and I always look at it like, so if you're a guy who can afford to charter a jet, it's like you drive the best Mercedes that's out there, right? But then you're forced into a situation where someone goes, hey man, here's the keys to my Bentley, right? Once those guys have used the Bentley, they're like, ooh, I'm going to keep my Mercedes, but I want a Bentley as well, right? And so it was just a great thing for the industry. But the decision I made, the decision I made to keep the company going instead of locking down was probably one of the best business decisions I ever made. Because post-COVID, a lot of my competitors closed. And when they tried to get started again, they had the cold start problem. For a year to get going again. We just hoovered up the market, right? But I had a problem is I believed that all these chefs would just come back to work and we just hoover them up. But a lot of these chefs, and because I know I'm a chef, chefs don't want to sit around on their ass, twiddling their thumbs, learning how to be coders, right? So they got into doing other things, and then they're like, "Oh, I don't want to work weekends and nights anymore." So we couldn't get the chefs, and so we ended up like we had so much business, we ended up having to turn work down for the first time ever.
Wow.
But yeah, that was crazy. That was just really crazy. Anyway, I decided to pull the plug on the home delivery. Maybe I could have carried on doing it, but the private jets is more profitable.
It sounds like that took all away all your attention.
Yeah.
and
Private
results.
jets was more profitable, right? And we'd certainly picked up some of the biggest spenders, biggest aircraft. We'd won some really good customers, like big head of state, Middle East fleets, you know? So I'm like, no, you know what? We focus on what we do best. We got to focus on what we do. We got to hoover up the top tier of the market, and we just crack on. But it wasn't easy, right? I mean, we've been since 2020. We nearly went bust twice. You know, managing cash flow, managing not having enough chefs. Yeah, it was brutal. It was brutal. And then 2014, I sat down with my shareholders, and I'm like, you know what? We've done this for 15 years. I'm like, I'm done. I can't. COVID just destroyed me. I was so burnt out. I was really physically and mentally in a really bad place, right? And my two shareholders, good guys, they were like, you know what, Dan, there's no point killing yourself to make money, right?
Yeah.
So let's sell. I'd already had a couple of companies that had come to me. So I just phoned them up and said, you still interested? They're like, yeah. So it took me a year to negotiate. I that was an interesting story because I'd put myself through a private equity courses, right? Because I like to know how the game is played. So I don't like to sit down at a poker game unless I know all the rules and all cards, right? So I learned how to do it. So I ended up negotiating this deal with this $1 billion American company and another company in the UK, and I didn't use any brokers or any lawyers. I just did it myself. My good South African lawyer buddy, he jumped in at the end and he was on the phone for me, you know, kind of when I needed it. But yeah, and then we ended up exiting April last year, and yeah, it was good, man. It was good, but it was really hard. And I think the post-exit thing, and this is something that I'm really getting, is this book that I'm writing, and I've read. I'm a massive reader, big avid reader. I love my fiction and I love my business books, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you as it can.
No, and you got
As
some of my
I'm going to do something I probably shouldn't do, but it's like, you know, it keeps saying,
yeah. Right?
it keeps
A
on
lot
going.
of business books are like one concept that they just then fill with fluff, right? But what I've noticed from reading a lot of business books, I think the best biography I ever read was the Steve Jobs one, right? And one of the things I remember the most about that Walter Isaac's book is that at the end he really talks in depth about Jobs' illness and the challenges he had and all the rest of it. And one thing I've noticed about a lot of these business books is that there's a lot of pat myself on the back, on a great. But no one ever talks about the exit. No one ever talks about the burnout and the PTSD. Right.
Yeah.
So I've made sure in the end of the book that I'm writing, I've put like 2 or 3 chapters aside for people to understand that you talk to friends and family, or, you know, and they're like, oh man, you're going to buy a boat. What color Ferrari are you going to get? You don't think about any of that shit. The day you've signed off, you've then got about 6 months work handing over. But also I just hit a wall, man. I'm like, I'm talking serious dark hole depression, like couldn't get out of bed. And that's not like me at all. I'm on the whole ADHD spectrum, right? And it's taken me until, you know, the last few months to really get myself physically and mentally better again. And you know, I think it's an important thing that, especially in EO, and I've talked to a lot of people about EO, and is understanding that, you know, us entrepreneurs, we just burn, don't we? We just keep going, right? Just keep going, keep going. And sometimes we put our mental and physical health aside, and it's not until you do something like exit or you realize that, fuck me, I'm actually doing myself a lot of damage, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was great. I'm, you know, feeling better. I had this whole list of shit I was going to buy and all this stuff I was going to buy. I ended up only buying myself a new motorbike, right? I was like, yeah, I'm going to buy this bike, that bike, this car, I'm going to do this. And I was like, the only thing I bought was a new enduro bike, right? But we had some beautiful holidays. And the thing with the 2 businesses that bought me, that was an interesting thing, right? I'd learned M&A. I'd sat in the room with M&A players. I'd been to LSE and INSEAD. I did M&A and I did private equity. I mean, these weren't like mega degrees or anything like that. They were just courses. I used to have a good laugh with the professors because they would be like, you know, Daniel, are you going to do any of the coursework? I'm like, look, I can either give you something from ChatGTP, or I'm just going to turn up and I'm just going to enjoy it and learn it and then take notes, right? And they're like, oh, but don't you want the certificate? Like, no, not really. I just want to learn. So, but it was it was a very interesting thing, and it put me into the mindset of M&A guys, and it put me into the mindset of PE guys, right? What are they looking for? What are the leverages? What are the things, right? When you're selling a business, how do you engineer a business in the background to be sold, right? And there are a few things I got from that. And I did this from about 2020, all, through COVID and after COVID. And the thing that I learned, one of the most important things was have your data room absolutely mega organized, every single bit of paperwork, all in there, done.
No surprises, everything organized.
Surprise. Because what it also does, it gives the buyer, one, they know you know what you're doing. Two, it was like, no, this company's well organized. They've got everything we need. There's no going to be any surprises for them. So when their lawyers were asking for like legal contracts and employment stuff, I'm like, yep, it's in there. Yep, it's in there. This is the one. This is the document. But also from a point of a negotiation thing I saw in 2023 or 24, I was in Dan Sullivan's course, which was amazing. It was fantastic. I went to a conference in Nashville and I saw Chris Voss speak, and a guy blew my mind. And then and then I went on masterclass, right? Every single entrepreneur I talk to now is like, if you want to know how to do deals, how to negotiate, how to be the master of the room without coming across as a big ego and a bit of a dickhead, you need to watch this, right? You need to learn. So I used those techniques in the negotiation. The two companies that were going to buy us was a big kind of billion-dollar American company and a much smaller company in the UK. The guy in the UK offered me more money. However, he had never merged. I'd acquired two businesses before we sold. He'd never bought another business. He'd never merged with another business. And he was about to take his business and my business that were similar sizes and merge them together. And he had no one in his team who'd done it before. And I was like, and he wanted me to stay in for 2 years and all this, or 3 years and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I don't trust you that you're going to be able, you might go bust. And then I'm not going to get the rest of my money. Because this is the thing, everyone thinks that you're going to, and I learned this from the M&A stuff as well, is no M&A guy is going to give you all the money up front. If you got all the money up front, wow, you're in like a very small percentage, right? They're going to try to negotiate a deal, and the deal is to get some
with
money.
Milestones and
So the Americans offered me less money. However, they'd already bought, I think, 30, 40 businesses like me, and they wanted London. But more importantly, they kind of let me know, which was probably not the greatest thing, but they kind of let me know they wanted the brand. Because normally they buy a company and they rebrand it. They wanted my brand.
And they just take the clients and the operations.
Yeah.
But you had a unique brand in a niche market, in a premium market. You are the Louis Vuitton of air travel food.
Yeah. So that gave me confidence to negotiate more money, right? Yeah. But I also I also learned that it's got to be a win-win, right? Yeah. And this is the thing that private equity and M&A lawyers and that get wrong, is they think they just want to win the deal. But with an entrepreneur and a business, there is an emotional
component,
connect, right?
Yeah.
And that entrepreneur's got to stay on. And if after the deal, the entrepreneur feels burned or the buyer feels burned, that relationship's going to disintegrate. And then,
and they need to wake up, they need to wake up the morning after and respect each other and continue to work for the coming months and years.
So it's got to be win-win, right? You've got to have a good relationship. I think there's an emotional side as well. And also for me, my team were incredibly important. I built a great team. Most of my ops guys were ex-military. There was a huge amount of trust there. My executive chef was ex-Navy. There was at that military level, there is a trust in the man next to you, right?
We're part of the same unit kind of thing.
I didn't want somebody walking in and cutting out my management team and all the rest of it. So it was also really important for me that they were looked after. I'm still there on the end of the phone for them, when they need me and what they need me to do. Occasionally they want me to fly over and meet with the top client, but essentially I don't work for them anymore.
So before we go to what's next on your kind of agenda, I kind of want to go back a second, because you did say it in passing. You mentioned in passing, but you were always good in marketing and sales. You said about PR I want to go back a bit to it because you had non-standard clientele, right? This is not a, hey, I'm going to put an ad on Facebook and I'm going to convert people to buy my, I don't know, my lipstick or whatever, right? It's like that. This is like royalty. This is billionaires. This is a high net worth individuals and corporations. So, like, how do you get them? How do you acquire? How do you acquire customers? How do you do marketing in sales in this world?
So our customer wasn't the guys or ladies sitting on the back of the plane. In all honesty, we couldn't give a shit who was flying on the plane.
Okay.
Right? Sometimes we didn't know, sometimes we did, right?
Yeah.
But our customer was the flight attendant, the chief pilot, or the catering team that managed the flights, right?
Okay.
The thing is, though, so they were kind of the decision maker on what caterer to use. But if the passenger on the back didn't like the food, they'd just tell the flight attendant, don't use it anymore, right? So you're delivering a product to please a passenger, because if the passenger's pleased, the flight attendant's pleased.
Yeah.
But the flight attendant is the one we had to sell to, had to
So
win.
they were your like first customer, and the catering and the flight attendant are your number one customer, and the actual customer is your proxy, by customer by proxy.
But if the customer loved us, so we had during COVID, there was I can't tell you exactly who they were, right? But during COVID, there was a Middle Eastern prince and princess who were flying in and out of the UK, right? Some of us got dispensation. Eventually, I was allowed to fly back and forth to Barcelona, and I was getting on planes with like 4 people on, right?
Yeah.
So if you had that status, you were allowed to fly, right? So there was this prince and princess who's flying in and out. And I'd been after their major fleet for years. I mean, they're talking, they've got jumbo jets, these guys, right? But they were flying on a Gulfstream, 450 or 550 or whatever it was. And it was all very quiet, open dagger. And anyway, I got a phone call one day from one of the platforms we used to work with. And they said, listen, I've got this flight coming in, and I can't tell you who it is, but it's her birthday, and we trust you. You are the best in the market. We need this is the first flight they're doing, and there's going to be more. It's just a small plane, very, very quiet. We need you to smash it out of the park. So my pastry chef made like this. We kind of knew they were Middle East, so he made like, I don't know, like Dubai chocolate, fucking amazing cake, and real amazing desserts and all this kind of stuff. Happy birthday and that kind of thing. And because of that, we ended up winning the entire fleet, because the Crown Prince.
You blew it out of the water.
Turn around and went, no one caters our plane apart from this couple,
Yeah.
right? So that's the other way you could win the customers. But it's interesting because people always say, oh, is like the quality the number one on the list? Reliability is number one. Always, hands down, will beat it every time, right? Sometimes price will come into it, right? But if you can't deliver, if you're late, if you forget things, right? There's no second chances in business aviation. That plane takes off and they haven't got the mint that goes in the boss's tea. That flight attendant could get fired, right? So you had to deliver every single time. So reliability and operational capability were number one. Some of the big wide body Middle East customers would not use us until we had 4 high loaders.
We had what?
A high loader. So a high loader is an 18-ton truck that, like you see in the airports. But these things are 250,000 to go, right? Mega expensive pieces of equipment, and you can have an 18-month waiting list for them. And they would not even look at us until we could turn around and send them a photograph of a fleet of 4 vehicles. Wow. Because they couldn't risk that if they came in, sometimes they did, in 2 separate airplanes, that we were not going to be able to unload and get that plane loaded in time. Had nothing to do with the quality, to do with the fact that our kitchen in Stansted was a fully
again, you keep saying logistic. It's a logistic company, but delivers gourmet food. Wow, super interesting. But I still want to push you a bit. So like you said, like, so again, what I hear you saying, my product had to be amazing for my customers, which it means it had to be reliable. It had to be able to blow people's mind away. Yeah, the quality had to be good. That's a given. That's like nobody's business. I had to make my client happy and their client happy. But still, how did you acquire them, especially in the beginning? Like, how did you get your foot in the door? How do you increase your foot in the door before you had a presence?
I learned in the market who were the like management companies who used to look
Mhm.
after these aircraft. If you've got an aircraft, you give it to a management company. You don't
Okay.
look after it yourself. And I basically just started doing tastings and turning up at offices.
Yeah.
And I remember one tasting for a company we won right at the beginning. They had about 60 aircraft on their fleet and that they managed. And I remember turning up to do this tasting with my box. And this was back at the time when I was still cooking, still doing the accounts, still doing the driving, right? And I went from chef jacket, packed the box, got changed into a shirt tie, walked into Farnborough Airport,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I get out this product with all the systems
Yeah.
and the card and all the rest of it. And I did this tasting on top of the filing cabinet. You've got to understand in a private, and I learned this from the yacht world, in a private jet, there's no space, there's no room, there's
No
hardly
space.
any prep
Yeah.
area. And I did this, moved the stuff on it, and I did this tasting on like a 3-stack kind of up here
Yeah.
filing cabinet. I was there for 2 hours, right? Because she'd been in the industry a long time. She was like 20 years, 25 years. She'd been in all the big corporate flight attendant, corporate head lead flight attendant here. And she was so blown away by the system I'd designed.
Wow.
And then she called in one of our other lead flight attendants, and I just handed her a dish and went,
Yeah.
there's a plate, there's a dish, give it a go. And this flight attendant put this together in like 90 seconds and turned around to her boss and was like, holy shit, we need this. And we got it. The crazy
Wow.
part of that is that we fucked up loads at the beginning.
No, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. It's not my business, but I'm getting excited just listening to the story. I literally see if this was a movie, like the Netflix movie, you're going against like that. You wait though. It's like one of those, it's a plot. It's a plot moment in the Netflix movie.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was that was kind of crazy. The thing is, we made a few mistakes with them at the beginning, right? We still hadn't got the packaging right, all the rest of it. But because I'd made such an impact on her at the beginning,
Yeah.
he came back to me and said, listen, some of the flight attendants have complained. Your packaging isn't quite right.
Yeah.
How you put things in the box isn't quite right. So she sent 2 of her lead flight attendants to my kitchen, and we spent like 2 days practicing and designing.
Amazing.
I started running a free culinary course. And everyone's like, why are you doing it for free? You should be charging. Well, because every month I would have 10 or 12 flight attendants in my kitchen using my product. And I would be watching every single mistake, where it didn't work, what went well, what didn't, what their comments were. And that enabled me over the next 2 years to enhance and make a product that was just so superior to everybody else's. That was from doing, that was a
So
big thing.
what would you do? Just go around, hey, I have this free culinary course, send your
Yeah,
flight attendants?
there were lots of Facebook groups and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff.
But I'm trying to, you were selling to a flight attendants or you were selling it to the people, companies? What?
The flight attendants,
And why did they want to come to the corner?
because catering is probably one of the biggest things for them, and they're not chefs, right?
Okay.
And the only culinary training they were really getting were like in culinary schools in like Lucerne and Geneva,
Yeah.
right? And we got them in, and as soon as we started doing that, they became raving fans, and then they just started telling everybody else.
Amazing.
So that's how we did it, really. I didn't do advertising. PR was a big thing. I do a lot of public speaking.
No, you did. This is advertising. You did word of mouth advertising. It's a non-standard. Non-standard one, but this is marketing. What you're describing, right? It's just like guerrilla marketing.
Guerrilla marketing.
Yeah.
Food's a motive, right?
Yeah.
You get good food in front of people and it looks cool.
It looks cool.
You throw a couple of chefs in jackets, people get excited, right? So that's kind of lucky on that front. I'm not selling nuts and bolts and washers, right? That I can't make it sexy. Food you can make sexy.
You make it sexy. Amazing. So what's next for you? Like what are you doing now? What are you thinking about in the coming the near future?
Writing this book. I'm now the president. I'm going to be the president of the EO Barcelona chapter.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to be spending lots of time with my kids. My wife is starting to get to the point where she's like, I'm not too sure I'm enjoying having you at home every day.
If you don't go away, how can I miss you? If you don't go away, how can I miss you? You're not letting me miss you.
I love M&A, right? I really love it. I really love it. And I really love operational, unsexy, boring business models. And then my first dip into that was laundry. And I'm like, my God, this is a great business, right? Totally.
Did you also sell the laundry business
Yeah,
as part
laundry
of it?
business went with it, right?
Yeah.
But on that is that now I'm looking at, the kind of looking at AI proof need businesses, right? And operational businesses, because my business was so complex. I can walk into most operational businesses and very quickly
Yeah.
see through the kitchen. We had the whole security issue as well. Every airport security clearance. No one could come in our business without 5 years checked history. So I think for me, that's where I want to go. We've invested in a couple of properties, but I really love. I like business. I just don't want to do the startup thing again.
You know,
Right.
yeah, yeah. That's okay. You shoot glass. That's the thing I keep going with. Like that's the metaphor I keep saying. Like doing a startup is chewing glass. It's choosing to chew glass. Maybe not forever, but even a short time is still painful.
Mm, mm. So that's what I like at the moment. I like roll ups. I like things that like businesses that sit below the PE viewpoint. Right,
Yeah.
they don't really like to buy anything less than 25 million revenue. Right, but there's some amazing businesses out there that people are desperate to sell because they're burnt out or they want to retire or whatever, that sit in that kind of 5 to 15 million revenue mark. And I buy a good solid business and then buy up some other businesses in the same vertical and roll them up, build them into a bigger, 20, 30, 40 million revenue and sell it to private equity. Now I know how the private equity game is played as well. It's like, okay, I could do that. I could do that. But I also like who, not how. Oh, I don't want to do it on my own. I don't want to do
Yeah.
anything on my own anymore. People and have some fun doing it. I don't need the stress of doing shit on my own anymore.
Yeah.
And I think it's fun doing stuff like that with other people. I think that's where maybe, that's what I'm thinking at the moment. But I'm still not in a rush.
Yeah. And you have a book too. And you have a book you want to do. So that's also a project by itself. Amazing.
Yeah.
So people that want to find you, where can they find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram. That's the best place for me. Certainly on my LinkedIn, on my Instagram. I got a lot of the cool videos on there. I'd love to take credit for it, but my wife and her sister do all the marketing and all the photography and video and that kind of stuff. But yeah,
Somebody has to be the front. Somebody has to be the front man.
yeah.
Somebody might as well.
So I'd say on that front at the moment, I got pretty big network on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But that's where they'll be able to find me, and there'll be more stuff coming out because I want to do a whole build up to launching this book.
So if you're listening to this, stop what you're doing. Go follow Daniel. We'll put links in the notes. And with that, was a sincere pleasure.
I really enjoyed it, man. I feel like I'm just like fire hosed with all this
That's a bit.
stuff with you.
I remember it's a quote that so many people said. The best way to be interesting is to live an interesting life, and you definitely have lived an interesting life. So thank you for sharing.
Thanks, man. Love it.
Yes.
Wonderful.
It's a wrap. This Ageas podcast episode ends here, but you don't. Now, is it crazy to think that you know somebody who'd love this episode? Share it with them, and they'll love you for it.